All right. Today on the show, I have with me Emily Leedom, who is the Executive Director of Catholic Family Services, and Katelynn Beldin, who is a counselor for Catholic Family Services. Hello, ladies.
Hello, Renee.
How are you?
We're doing great. Happy Advent.
Yes. Ooh, Advent is so great. And we're coming up on the Pink Sunday. And how do you say that? Please help me.
Is it Gaudete?
I think.
Yeah.
I had Dr. Chris Bergwald in the studio a week or so ago, and I made him say it for me.
Wise decision.
Yes. Can you just please say that for me? Advent. We're coming up on Christmas, so busy time. But we wanted to talk today, bring you guys in to talk about a topic that some people experience very heavily during the holidays, grief and loneliness, and this year might be worse than some others. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that a little bit. First, Emily, you are in a new role.
Yeah.
So I don't think I've had you on the show since you've actually stepped into your new role. So can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and how it's going?
Yeah, probably not. So a lot of our listeners will know me from my previous role as the Director of Marriage, Family, and Respect Life for the diocese, which is a role that I just loved and really have a heart for families and for marriages. And about 3 months ago, sometime in October, I read the job description for the Executive Director of Catholic Family Services, and the Lord just really prompted my heart, made it very clear that it aligned with a lot of the things that were, that the Lord was kind of speaking to me about. So it's been a real joy. I threw my hat in the ring, and like I said, the Lord made it very clear that that's where He wanted me. So I get to work with awesome people like Katelynn. Mary Weber is our clinical director, who's amazing, and we just have an awesome
you guys have a great staff.
Yeah, that's been a real joy to work with. Yeah. So we do a lot of counseling services, a lot of grief programming, that kind of thing, and really all at the service of human flourishing and the desire to meet the human needs of formation.
Right, good. And then we have Katelynn Beldin. Katelynn is new to Catholic Family Services for about how long now?
About 4 months.
Okay. So, Katelynn, will you tell us about your background, where you come from, why you came here?
Sure. So born and raised in the area. My mom and dad still reside in Valley Springs, South Dakota.
Okay.
So I graduated from Brandon Valley High School. As far as like my professional background goes, I spent quite a few years working at Children's Home Society.
Okay.
In a multitude of roles there. And it was there that I decided that I would go back for my master's in counseling.
Okay.
So recently graduating with my master's in clinical mental health counseling from Colorado Christian University.
Wow.
So, and happy to be brought on at Catholic Family Services.
Yeah. Is this your first job since getting your master's?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Are you enjoying it so far?
Yeah.
Emily's not being too hard on you?
No.
Kaylynn's my go-to for things. I've got all these questions and things and we're both like, we're just figuring this out together, aren't we?
Yep.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So good. So we're going to talk with Katelynn for the most part this morning. And Emily, you'll jump in wherever you feel the need, if you would. So as we said, the holidays can be a really difficult time for some people. They may have lost someone recently, or even if it's been years, especially if they lost them around the holidays, that can make it extra difficult. This year we have the added fun of COVID and separation from our families in a lot of cases. So what are some things that people are facing at this time of year as far as when they're dealing with grief and loneliness?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest things that people face are bittersweet memories. I had my loved one here maybe a few months ago for like the past holiday, or even just like the memories we build with families over the years. So bittersweet memories, triggers.
Okay. Can you tell a little bit about that?
Yeah. So kind of like seeing other people happy, or even if I'm talking to you, a conversation about like, yeah, I'm getting my dad this great gift. And then it's like, oh, but I don't have my dad.
Sure.
And so then, everybody around us is happy that it's the holiday season. There's all these great memories, but then that might not be the case for you.
Right.
And so we all talk and celebrate without recognizing that maybe the person next to us isn't doing that this season.
And I think that's really difficult for the rest of us, because you certainly don't talk about those things in a meaning to hurt anyone. You're just talking, and so it's very difficult to remember that so we need to cognitively think, okay, you know, what's this person maybe going through, and maybe just take a step back once in a while. And, you know, you don't want to snub everything as far as not talk about anything, but just to kind of keep that in mind and maybe not dwell on a topic that might trigger someone.
Absolutely. And I think too, part of it is even just being aware that if you're having the conversation, that person might be more silent, and to let them have that space, not to try to pull them in, or like,
That's great advice.
you know. And another way that it is a trigger, like you were mentioning earlier, some people lost their loved ones close to a holiday. So then Christmas trees going up can be a trigger. Things of that nature.
Sure. So I suppose there'll be people out there that you might invite to your home for Christmas. And if they say no, you maybe shouldn't. Don't press the issue if you know that there's been a recent death, or they, you know that the holidays are difficult for them. You can always hope they'll come and invite them, but pressing it might make it worse.
Yeah,
maybe.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it could make it worse, but also then they have the dual guilt of like, gosh, I'm letting this person down, but then also I'm letting myself down if I go, because that's just not something I'm able to do right now. And so there's a lot of feelings of guilt in that. So I think one way that we can help those who are grieving is giving them permission to grieve in the manner that feels best to them.
Sure.
And not in the manner we expect people to grieve.
Sure.
Because our expectations are always different than.
Absolutely.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So is there anything else that they face that I missed while I interrupted you? I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. The last one I'll mention is feeling lonely. And I think that one is just a lot bigger this year, because we have individuals who are being asked to isolate. We have an elder population that's being told, like, hey, you can't leave these assisted living facilities that you're living in. And we aren't made as a human race to be in isolation. So that creates immense loneliness. So I think that's a big one for this holiday season. And really.
Yeah, especially. I know probably one of the things you guys are seeing, and we didn't talk about this beforehand, I didn't bring this up with you, but have you been dealing with more people who might be considering suicide in your counseling and so on? Has that become a bigger issue in the last few months?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we've seen a huge uptake in terms of specifically suicidal clients. And oftentimes within Catholic Family Services, we will refer those individuals to kind of the next level of care. Because there's often just more that's needed.
Right.
But I will say, I think the mental fragility has massively increased. Our counseling numbers are recordly high, and which, praise the Lord, people are really seeking assistance.
Right.
But there's a mental fragility and there's an anxiousness that I think we're seeing a lot of, anxiety and depression, which goes back to, you know, as Katelynn was describing, that loneliness. And I think especially around big moments. So around holidays, whether it was Thanksgiving or coming up on Christmas or around the New Year, that feeling of loneliness can really be heightened because of what our expectations are of those times of year. Our expectation is to be surrounded by family, to be surrounded by people that we love. And if that's not the reality we're experiencing, then that loneliness can really uptake. So I know nationally, those suicide rates absolutely are increasing, and individuals recognizing or acknowledging, hey, something's not right in me is very high.
Yeah. And I'm so glad to hear you say that. I mean, although it's maybe not a good thing that there's so many people who need counseling, but it's good that they're going to get it.
Yeah.
Because, ignoring it is not going to be helpful in the end.
I would love for Katelynn, you said something to me a little while ago. Can I ask
a
question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
You said something to me a while ago in a conversation that I thought was so beneficial. We were talking about who needs counseling, or the individuals that seek out counseling, and how oftentimes we put people that are seeking counseling kind of in this box of, wow, they must really be struggling. And you just had some great insight into that I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, of like, no, counseling can be for anyone.
Yeah, I mean, to go off of that, I just think that so often, like Emily was saying, we say, oh, go to counseling if you're experiencing anxiety or depression or just a multitude of symptoms. Like there has to be a symptom and that's why you're coming to counseling.
Right.
And that's not true.
Right.
I think that counseling can also just be a place where you feel safe and you can just speak to what's on your heart. Maybe you just need somebody to help you discern what the next step is. Like, do I go to college or do I take this job?
Yep.
It doesn't always have to be about the symptoms.
Sure.
I mean, we love to have clients of for all different reasons. You know, that's what we're here for. And so, and I think there's just such like grace in that and not having to be like, oh, but my problem's not big enough.
Right. I don't have enough symptoms from that problem to go talk to someone about it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all are welcome. And even if you just need to come in and say like, okay, my mom needs to quit being a helicopter mom. Like, I just need somebody to tell
Moms
this to.
don't do that. Come on now.
I mean, mine doesn't, but
That's funny.
you know, but just a space. It doesn't have to be anything big.
Right, right. If you're just joining us, I'm talking to Emily Leedom and Katelynn Beldin, both from Catholic Family Services today. Okay, so are there some things that you can recommend that people can do to ease the grief, either the people who are feeling it or the people around them, and maybe a little bit of both, especially during this time?
Yeah. So first I'll go with kind of like some tips for individuals who are grieving during this holiday season.
Great.
First, plan ahead. And so by that, I just mean kind of know what events are coming up, what you've been invited to, and then kind of like know your meter of like, what can I make it through and what is not going to work for me this season. Don't let other people determine what you should or shouldn't do. Right. And so maybe for me, like I want to go and do all the traditions I've always done with this loved one. But there's other individuals who are like, I cannot possibly complete this or do this without them.
Right.
And just have so much respect for that. Accept limitations. So some of your friends are going to be like, yes, I'm coming. And then an hour before they're like, I can't do it.
Right.
You know, just being willing to receive that and know like, this isn't about me.
Right.
You know, don't take that personally if you're somebody who's not grieving.
Right.
Yeah, be informed about attending events. So maybe it might be asking like, okay, who's all going to be there? Because I can come if I'm expecting the 5 people that I know and then showing up and it being 10 to 15. It's like,
Right.
ooh.
Right. Which creates a whole different set of pressures for that person.
Yep, absolutely. And maybe you can manage the conversation with those 5 people because you know them, but then the other 10 don't know what to say to you.
Right.
And so then you're not sure how to act. It's just a different arena, really.
Yeah.
And then 2 more, find time to rest.
Oh, that's a great one. Yeah.
So maybe if you're at Christmas with your family, you're like, you know what? I need to take a 30-minute break. Maybe you really love your in-laws, but they're kind of overwhelming.
That's surely not possible either.
Right. So you're like, I'm going to take a 30-minute walk and just find one individual that you can say, hey, I'm going to step out. If anybody asks, just say I'm taking a break. You don't have to tell everybody, like,
right?
Because then they might want to join you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And then lastly, find ways to remember and honor the person who died.
Oh, yeah. That's a great thought. I think we don't think about that all the time. I think being in grief, you might just be thinking about, I got to get through this, but that's a great way to work through it, I'm sure, is to honor them some way. Do you have some suggestions on ways to do that off the top of your head?
I think it just depends on the individual and kind of what you did together. It might be setting out a little chair and just saying like, this is a spot for my loved one that's not here. It might be, I know this is a kind of an example. I had a sister that passed away when I was 12 and she was 9 at the time. And she has a twin sister who is still here with us.
Sure.
And on her birthday, she always buys yellow roses
Okay,
to
sure.
remember.
Yeah.
And so kind of like things like that, maybe you pick out a flower that's their favorite color and you
Right.
have it as your centerpiece, and
Right.
that's your way of honoring them.
Right. And sometimes those things might not happen right away, like the first holiday you're experiencing after that grief. It might come later, which is okay.
Absolutely.
Too. Yeah.
And I do want to say, oftentimes the first year, you're just engrossed in more numbness. And so the first holidays sometimes aren't as hard as the second holidays. And I don't say that to scare people, but just to have like raw honesty, and that, it can be more difficult because you don't expect that
Right.
second wave.
Yep. And it really would take you off guard.
Right.
Yeah. So are there some things that we can do to help the people who are struggling in our lives? Or did you give me all of those? Are there other things we can do?
Well, I'll just talk about the permission too.
Okay. Yeah.
So not only as somebody who might be grieving, but as somebody who might be really sitting with somebody who's grieving, giving them permission to change their mind,
Okay.
giving them permission to take space, giving them permission to cry.
Oh, yeah.
So often we as humans want to make it better, right? Yeah. And so it's like, it'll be better, or what can I do to help you move on? And really, like, you just need somebody who can sit with you and let you cry. We don't need people to fix our hurt.
Right.
We need somebody who's going to be there with us.
Right. And if it's a new loss, is it good? I'm thinking of like if someone just lost someone in the last few months or so, if this is the first time you've seen them, is it good to recognize that, say, I'm sorry for your loss or anything like that? Is it better to leave it alone, do you think? Maybe it depends on the person.
I think it depends on the person. One thing I will say is, as somebody who's lost an individual, it's nice to hear even, I'm still thinking about you. Because a lot of times there's like all of the engagements surrounding like the funeral and the wake, and the couple weeks after, everybody's bringing you food, and then that kind of dies off. And then you're still in it.
Yep.
By no means have you moved on, or should you have moved on by that point.
Right.
But kind of the world around you may have.
Right.
And so it's nice to even just hear, hey, I'm still thinking about you.
Right. So people recognize that it's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Are there some ways we can use our faith to guide us in our grieving?
Yeah, absolutely. I just say lean into Christ. Who knows pain and suffering better than he?
Yeah, for sure.
I have one here, Hebrew 5:8. Though he was a son, yet he learned obedience by the things which he suffered. Christ suffered for us. He knows that.
Yep.
He heals wounds of every shattered heart. Psalm 147:3.
Right.
So I think one of my favorite quotes is, in the silence he speaks. So giving ourselves time to sit in silence with Christ and really handing it over to him. One of my favorite images is Christ died on the cross with his arms wide open. And he could have chosen to really pass in any manner, but that's what he chose.
Yeah.
Right. And so his arms are always open, always ready for the good or the bad. And only he can take the bad that we are feeling and living and experiencing and make it good.
Right.
We can't do that for ourselves.
Right. And thank goodness he does it willingly and often.
Yeah, absolutely. So, really being able to hand it over to Christ. And I think it's okay too. Some people might be thinking like, I am so angry with God right now. How could he? Why? What if? All the questions, right? Which we know that God's not going to give us an answer to.
Right.
At least not in a manner we want him to come.
Not usually, nope.
But he knows that.
Right.
And so I think it is so honest to just be able to give your anger to Christ too.
Sometimes you have to have it out with him just a little bit.
Yeah.
And then be done with it if you
Yes.
can, or as soon as you
Yeah.
can, and
Yeah.
accept the love.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great suggestions. We only have about a minute.
Okay.
So what ways does CFS help in grieving and loneliness?
Yeah, I mean, we offer a couple of different grief programs throughout the year where individuals can come to. So we have Grief Share. We just finished some holiday grief programs, but we absolutely always have resources if individuals are just wanting information, books, and then, of course, counseling.
Right.
When you come to Catholic Family Services, you can expect just like a comforting, warm environment, hot chocolate or coffee.
I might stop down later.
Right.
Very important.
And just a space. We are here so you can be heard. And I just want to say, like, we so much honor wherever you're at in your journey and would love to walk alongside you.
Right.
In that.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good place to go if you really need it. I know I've met a few of the counselors, and everybody down there is really great. So thank you so much for being here today, ladies. That went really fast.
Yeah.
Oh
no
my
kidding.
gosh.
There's so much to talk about.
There is. We could talk for quite a bit longer, but that is all the time we have. So I guess we have to stop. Thanks for being here.
Yes.
All right. Next week, my guest will be Dr. Chris Bergwald, our producer, Bill Seeley, and a secret guest. Bill's shaking his head. And a secret guest. And we're going to have a Catholic Views Christmas show. So we're going to talk about some biblical bites about Christmas. We're going to have a Christmas quiz. We're going to think about memories from our Christmases and just have a little fun. So I hope you will come join us next week for more Catholic Views.